Is pre-recorded. VCY America presents Crosstalk, a nationwide call-in program discussing issues that have an effect on our families, our communities, our churches, our nation, and our world. Crosstalk, an opportunity for you to voice your concerns for biblical principles. And now live by satellite and around the world on the internet at vcyamerica.org. Here is today's Crosstalk.
And welcome to Crosstalk here on the VCY America Network. My name is Jim Schneider. We're glad that you've joined us today. And we are awaiting a phone call from Australia right now here as we look forward to the interview topic for today. We'll get to that, Lord willing, here in just a short moment. Here is a interesting story, though, just on an update on a previous Crosstalk program in regard to the Susan G. Komen for the Cure. And, folks, it comes out community after community. This time it's Chicago. The Chicago Tribune reporting about 700 fewer people participated this year than last year in the Susan G. Komen Chicago 3-day event over the weekend. The event to raise awareness and money to fight breast cancer drew about 1,200 walkers. Last year, 1,900 people participated. A Komen spokeswoman said that 2 decisions regarding Planned Parenthood affected participation in Chicago. The Susan G. Komen for the Cure Foundation, of course, drew nationwide attention when they ended their support of Planned Parenthood and then rescinded that, reestablishing their support for Planned Parenthood once again. And people are fed up. They said that we don't want our dollars going. If we're going to fight breast cancer, we don't want them to be utilized to kill little babies. And Komen for the Cure still does not get it. They're wondering why we're having so many people leaving, not only the organization, I believe, but also fewer people participating in the process. If you want to be in contact with them, you can call this number, 877-465-6636. That's 877-GO-KOMEN, where you can continue to let your views be made known regarding their continued support of Planned Parenthood. Again, that's 877-465-6636. Well, the issues pertaining to the topic of origins is one that is continuing to have an impact across this nation and around the world as well. We're going to be looking at the aspects pertaining to evolution and the evidence that shows it is impossible. Joining us by way of phone from Australia right now is Dr. John Ashton. He is the Adjunct Professor of Biomedical Sciences at Victoria University in Melbourne, Australia, and Adjunct Professor of Applied Sciences at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. Dr. Ashton is a chartered fellow of the Royal Australian Chemical Institute and a former Honorary Associate in the School of Molecular and Microbial Biosciences there at the University of Sydney. He's got a bachelor's and master's degrees in biology, a doctorate in epistemology. He has also served as editor of several books on science and faith, including the book In 6 Days, Why 50 Scientists Choose to Believe in Creation. He's with us here today to speak about his book, Evolution Impossible, 12 Reasons Why Evolution Cannot Explain the Origin of Life on Earth. And Dr. Ashton, thank you for joining us today on Crosstalk.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Jim.
Yes. We're so glad you could be with us here today. Dr. Ashton, there have been many books that have come out during the last couple of decades with evidence for creation. Tell us what led you to this book, Evolution Impossible.
Well, I was heard about a number of students who would brought up in Christian homes who would go to university and then be told that evolution was a fact, and this was really challenging their faith in the Bible. And I thought, this is wrong. Evolution is not a proven fact. Far from that. In fact, when we look at the best scientific evidence that we have today, creation is the most reasonable explanation of how we came to be here, because we now have enough scientific evidence to say that evolution is absolutely impossible. And so, hence that title for my book, Evolution Impossible. And I've looked at 12 reasons why evolution cannot explain the origin of life in that book, but actually I've looked at many more reasons than that. I just sort of summarised it as 12 reasons. And I think it's just so important that young people know that they don't have to be bullied into believing creation. Sure, if you're studying biology, believe in evolution. Sure, if you're studying biology and the exam questions are there, then then you're taught something in a syllabus, and you may have to reply in a certain way in the exam question in order to pass. But we don't have to believe that. And so I set these reasons out in the book. These reasons are based on, as I said, the mainstream scientific research that is done. I've heavily referenced the book to the mainstream research, so I use mainly the mainstream research in establishing the arguments that evolution is impossible.
Oh, Dr. Ashton, we appreciate your early wake-up call here this morning. I know that it's tomorrow morning there in Australia, and we appreciate...
Yes, it's Wednesday morning here, 5 a.m. where I am. I live just north of Sydney.
Oh. Doctor, the basis for scientific research is supposed to be to find the truth, and of all people, scientists are supposed to have open minds as they look for evidence. But could you tell us why it is when it comes to this topic of origins, there are so many scientists who are closed-minded to the evidence that's shouting so loudly of creation?
Well, in truth, I don't believe that there are so many scientists that are saying that shouting creation down. At least my experience here in Australia, I think there are a very vocal few scientists who are really pushing the evolution point of view, and indeed in all our universities here we would be teaching evolution, and we would be in schools here we would be teaching evolution as a fact, and that's what most scientists have been taught, and that's what they are continuing to teach. But in most cases, those scientists themselves have not really questioned it in any detail, possibly because that's the way they've been taught, and they go on to teach it. And in their everyday research, they do actual research. When they write it up in a paper, they would have to write it up in an evolutionary framework, or it wouldn't get published. And unfortunately, this has continued on so far these days that it's very difficult to publish a paper showing that evolution would be impossible or evidence for creation. And so it's a sort of a self-reinforcing cycle that scientists are continually reading about this. But when you actually speak to them personally, most of them actually aren't working in a research field that is supporting evolution, or most of them have a confused understanding of evolution. And perhaps let me just explain this. Evolution can occur by two basic mechanisms. If everything that is alive comes about in its form as it grows from whatever the seed or the little embryo that it comes from, because of the genetic code that it has inside that we call DNA. And if there are changes to that DNA, if there's some sort of mutation to that DNA, that little new developing organism will be different from its parents. And that can happen as a result of losing some of the code being damaged. That will change the organism. It'll be a little bit different. Or if we add new components to the code, obviously that organism will be different. Now, just yesterday on the news I heard where Japanese scientists reported that butterflies in Japan, they've been looking at those, in the area near where the radioactive fallout occurred, their wings are now much smaller. And some of them aren't maturing fully, and they're dying because they're maturing. Now, obviously that's due to a damage to the code now. The code that made full-size wings has been damaged, and that made the wings grow to full size has been damaged, and they're only producing wings part size. Now, this is the sort of evolution that we see happening. That really happens. That And that's the evolution the examples that we see in the textbooks are really all examples where the code has been damaged. But when scientists talk about life evolving, fish evolving into an amphibian evolving into a reptile and so forth, that requires totally new code. We've got to have, the fish has to have totally new code to go from a fin to a leg and a shoulder system and a pelvic system to support its weight. Massive amount of new code. Unbelievable amount of new code. And so much new code that for most people's minds it's so hard to grasp how much new code is required. Now, that new code is never seen to form. We never have any examples that we've seen of that new code forming. No scientist has ever observed substantial amounts of new code forming. But that's what the theory of evolution requires. And most scientists, I believe, confuse the evidence that we see from the loss of code and think in their mind that these changes that are produced from the loss of code can somehow correspond to changes in new code forming. But it doesn't work that way. It never happens that way. It's never been observed. And this is the subtle difference. But scientists, of course, who want to get rid of God from the community, they're pushing evolution as a mechanical alternative for how we came to be. They're pushing long ages. So I hope that clarified an important point.
Absolutely. And, I mean, you've been researching these issues for decades, and I guess what I'm hearing you say that through all your research, there's not one paper, not one scientific paper, not any evidence that provides proof that a living cell could actually arise from non-living molecules. Is that correct? That's
absolutely correct. They have no known mechanism for that. The textbooks simply say the Earth was formed about 4,500 billion years ago, and sometime thereafter, possibly around 380,000 million years ago, life arose. That's what they say, life arose. Now, when you look at some of these statements by the American Association of Advancement of Science and so forth, that and a number of science academies around the world, they've made statements, they've published statements with regard to saying that they believe that life arose by and proceeded by evolutionary processes to the point where it is now. Matter of fact, NASA defines life as that process that enables evolution to occur. But all these things are political assertions. The fact that they have to make these assertions that, the such and such academy says this and the such and such academy says evolution is a fact and that scientists have a consensus is because they don't have the evidence. If they had the evidence, they'd say just Jones, Blogg and Smith in their paper published in Nature in 2011 showed that evolution was a fact, and this was confirmed by Wotherspoon, Blight, and Carruthers in their paper published in Science in January 2012, or whenever it occurred. They would just cite some research paper that showed this, much the same as we do. That's how scientists say, want to prove a point. They say this was discovered by so-and-so and verified by these other researchers here.
But no research paper exists. Doctor, we need to take a quick 60-second break. We'll be back in 1 minute. You're listening to Crosstalk on VCY America.
Back to Genesis with Dr. John Morris, scientist with the Institute for Creation Research. Dr. Morris, do chimpanzees ever eat meat, or are they vegetarians?
Chris, chimps are usually presented as happy, peaceful, friendly vegetarians, and it would be better if humans would model their own behavior after the chimpanzees. Imagine evolutionists' chagrin when they discovered that chimps sometimes make a spear and go hunting other monkeys for food. This, of course, is the biblical picture. Animals, some of which are vegetarians, are all under the curse of sin. At the flood, the earth was so filled with human as well as animal violence that God had to wipe it all out and start again. Sin had completely ruined the original very good creation. Chris, it's totally improper to model human behavior after animal behavior because everything is cursed. The Creator gave us better guidelines back in Genesis.
Thanks, Dr. Morris. For more information, you can find us on the web at www.icr.org.
We're on the phone live to Australia today with Dr. John Ashton, Adjunct Professor of Biomedical Sciences at Victoria University in Melbourne and Adjunct Professor of Applied Sciences at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. He's got a whole lot more credentials here, but to shorten it up, he is with us today speaking about his book entitled Evolution Impossible, 12 Reasons Why Evolution Cannot Explain the Origin of Life on Earth. Doctor, so often we are told that the fossil record is proof of evolution, that many millions of years of sediments have had to be laid down. However, you list in your book the fossil record as evidence of extinction but not evolution. Tell us about it.
Right. When we look at the fossil record, we see fully formed animals. We don't see evidence of gradual change in these animals. And another important point is that many people don't realise is that when we look at the geologic column as portrayed in textbooks, they have a characteristic example of each period of time or epoch and animals for those different sections, and they appear to show an evolutionary pathway. But what many people don't realise is that we just don't find those animals. We find the animals all mixed up in the fossil layers. Large majority of animals mixed up in the different layers. So classically you'll see birds above dinosaurs, but we actually find birds and dinosaurs together in the same layer. The same you'll see mammals portrayed further up the column than dinosaurs, but we find mammals at the same time as the dinosaurs in the fossil record. What the fossil record is just a record of extinction of fully formed animals, and there's a number of top paleontologists that have pointed this out.
Well, what does an evolutionist do? I mean, they have that data, they have that information. How is it that they will distort the facts in order to bring about an evolutionary view?
Because they're inculcated with the view that life has evolved, and when they're doing their research, that's how it has to be reported. If they report otherwise, then it's not likely to get published. But Barbara Stoll, I forget the university that she was at now, but she was a world-leading paleontologist. She pointed this out a number of years ago, and Dr. Ralph, who was president of the Paleontological Society in the US, he pointed that out as well. And I recall as well Stephen Jay Gould pointed out that if you actually look at the fossil record, it is, and the evolutionary trees, the evidence for them in the fossil record is actually lacking. They're largely constructs. So this was, and of course he was professor at Harvard. The other link why people today think in terms of evolution is that they've looked at the DNA and they have pieces of DNA from a fruit fly will be found in a mouse and so forth, and so they see this as evidence that there was an evolutionary trail. But of course it doesn't really mean that at all. It just means that it was a component of design that God has used, all the way through. For example, I used to have a 1949 Cadillac convertible when I was a student. I broke down one day in a very remote region of Australia, and I went to this little community garage. My petrol pump had failed. The car had the same petrol pump as an Australian design car, 1953 Holden. Why? Because the same component was used. And I think the same thing with God in His design of nature. 5 fingers on a hand is a very useful structure. That doesn't prove that one structure evolved into the other. That it's not a proof at all.
Let's look at another area that you address in your book, and that is with radiometric dating. We often read of accounts of radiometric dating saying, well, this proves things are hundreds of thousands or millions of years old. What about radiometric dating? It seems from the dates that we have that it shows we've been here a long, long time.
Yes, and I think this is perhaps one of the most convincing arguments to regular science. But what most people haven't examined radiometric dating in detail. And when you look at it, you find that we actually get different answers on the same rocks depending on the method we use. And it really seems to be related to the half-life of the element rather than the age of the rock. So, for example, some rocks, some lava flows that erupted in the 1950s and 1960s in New Zealand were very accurately dated here at the Australian National University Laboratories. So that's one of the top or prestigious universities in Australia, located in the capital. And they had a range of dates ranging from tens of millions of years to their lead date was about 3,500 million years for rocks that we know were only 60 years old. They were, or 50 years old. They were dated in 2000. This work was done, so it's very recent technology. So when you look at the data overall, you get a range of dates. What they do is appears to be they publish the result that is in harmony with the standard age for that type of rock as dated by the geological column. So we have first-hand evidence from that point of view. The other thing is that when you look at the history of radiometric dating, a lot of those initial dates were based on the radiometric dating data happened to confirm estimates made on erosion rates, that very slow erosion rates and sedimentation rates occurred. But we know that that can't be the case because you can't bury and fossilise animals with particularly big animals with slow sedimentation rates. So there's totally inconsistent data there. I think another very strong argument for that the dating is out is also the finding of carbon-14 in the some of the dinosaur remains and coal and in diamonds. This is very, very important evidence because carbon-14 dating works the opposite way. Carbon-14 decays relatively quickly. So after about 80 or 100,000 years, there's actually no detectable carbon-14 left on the basis of theory. So when we regularly find carbon-14 in coal. So this coal is supposed to be anything from 80 to 300 million years old. But the fact that we find remaining carbon-14 in there, it can't possibly be that old. And the dates all give dates around about 30 or 40,000 years old. And this shouldn't be a worry to creationists because the level of carbon-14 depends on cosmic ray flux. And so if it was a little bit older, a bit less in the past, then the dates would be... the actual calculated dates would be younger than what we calculate today. But the fact that we find that carbon-14 means that those rocks that contain the coal or those fossils can be nowhere near that old. They can't be millions of years old. It's absolutely impossible. The carbon-14 wouldn't still be there. So we have very, very strong evidence that there are major problems with the radiometric dating method. And the other thing is, from a method validation point of view, the method has never been validated for prehistorical dates. In order for us to do that, we'd have to have another two independent methods of calculating the age of the rock, and we don't really have that. Or where we do have it, as for example, when we date historical rocks, we get really weird answers.
Dr. John Ashton is our guest today. He's author of the book Evolution Impossible. It's one of the most compelling and authoritative rebuttals of evolution today. He uses recent discoveries in genetics, biochemistry, geology, radiometric dating, and other scientific disciplines, and explains chapter by chapter here in a very straightforward way, a very straightforward language, 12 compelling reasons why Darwin's theory of evolution is just a myth. Dr. Ashton has been active in science, teaching, and research for over 40 years, and we're making available this book today, Evolution Impossible, our way of saying thank you for your support of $17 or more to Crosstalk. That donation does include postage coming to your home, and we would encourage you to pick up your phone and call to obtain your copy of Evolution Impossible by dialing 1-800-729-9829. That's the VCY America switchboard, 1-800-729-9829, and ask for a copy of the book Evolution Impossible, 12 Reasons Why Evolution Cannot Explain the Origin of Life on Earth. What about the Big Bang, Doctor? Could the Big Bang have happened?
Well, the scientific evidence that we actually have is that the Big Bang never happened. None of the major predictions of the Big Bang theory have been validated. In other words, when we look for the experimental evidence, it just isn't there. And so they go back and make another adjustment to the theory. We should really consider the Big Bang theory as a creation myth that's just dressed up with mathematical equations.
And yet we
just a myth.
Yet we see it espoused in our school textbooks and university textbooks, and then we've got people like I believe even Hugh Ross, who's jumped on the bandwagon of the Big Bang.
Well, that's correct. The whole Big Bang theory is the prevalent theory, mainly because scientists have got no explanation for how we can be here. They haven't got a theory that really fits the data all that well. So the Big Bang model is simply a mechanical model to try to explain the formation of the universe and the galaxies, but it's made up of a number of ridiculous assumptions. For example, inflation theory, that requires that the laws of physics that we observe today at an early point in time didn't apply, didn't work. There were different laws of physics. Now, that's taught as a theory. But there's no way that you can verify that. There's no way that you could test whether that was so. And what we're saying is, well, what we see today didn't apply back then. We have inflation theory. It's just totally made up. Why have they got to make it up? Because if they don't make it up, if they don't have inflation theory, the Big Bang theory doesn't work. The same reason they've got to have dark matter. They've got to make up dark matter. Why? Because when we look at the laws of physics, the law of Baron number, for example, when you convert energy into matter, you get an equal amount of matter and antimatter. But we observe whatever it is, 90-95% matter out there in the universe. We don't observe enough antimatter. There's only about 5% antimatter. And so in order to get it to fit, they have to impose this dark matter, which we haven't discovered yet. So it's full of all these constructs. Another thing that people, perhaps many people who support the Big Bang Theory don't realise, in that they think, well, okay, there was this something that exploded in space and formed the universe as we know it. But that's not how the Big Bang Theory has been constructed, because we look to be about in the centre of the universe. In other words, as we look out in space, there's roughly equal density all around. In other words, we seem to be near the centre of the universe. What they've done is they've invoked what they call the cosmological principle, which says that no, matter and energy didn't expand in three-dimensional space. Three-dimensional space expanded into four-dimensional space. So they make up this whole, again, construct of a fourth dimension. So it's not energy expanding in space, which most people's mind envision when they hear about the Big Bang Theory. It's actually space itself expanding. And the reason why they do... So,
tell you what, we're going to have to pick up after the break here, Doctor. Dr. John Ashton is our guest. And stay tuned. We'll be giving our phone line here in just a moment.
From Dave Cristiano Films come 2 DVDs which emphasize a high standard of purity. Pamela's Prayer tells the story of Pamela Buckland. All of her friends were dating, but Pamela was not. It seemed unfair that her father insisted on a high standard of purity. That is, it seemed unfair until the day she was married. Due to response to Pamela's Prayer, the second DVD, One Lucky Lady, was made. It's a touching drama that presents a perspective on purity before marriage that is insightful and heartfelt. Through the end of February, VCY America is making available this Purity Pack of DVDs. Any 2 copies are available for a donation of $15. Or if you want multiples to share with others, any 4 copies are available for a donation of $20. Or a combination of 12 DVDs is available for a donation of $42 to VCY America. To obtain your copies, call 1-800-729-9829 and specify how many of each DVD you wish to order. That's 1-800-729-9829.
You're listening to Crosstalk here on VCY America. Dr. John Ashton speaking to us from Australia today. He's the author of Evolution Impossible, 12 Reasons Why Evolution Cannot Explain the Origin of Life on Earth. We're going to have him pick up with his Big Bang, some concluding thoughts on that in just a moment. But I do want to give you opportunity to get on board as well with your questions here today. He has studied for well over 4 decades these issues. Our telephone number to Crosstalk, 800-733-9829, 1-800-733-9829. And perhaps there's been just some issue that's just really been bothering you, and how you can look at this with evidence as it supports creation versus evolution. Have some issues you're wrestling with, pick up your phone, give us a call, 800-733-9829. Dr. Ashton, you were I was interrupting you there as you were talking about the Big Bang, and you were talking about basically how they have to accept this in order to fit their evolutionary model in that regard.
That's right. They need very long ages for the universe and the life on Earth, so the Big Bang Theory is part of that, but it is very important to understand that none of the predictions of the Big Bang Theory, none of the significant predictions have actually been proven. They have virtually no major evidence for the validity of the Big Bang Theory, and a number of scientists now are protesting against that, including a number of leading American scientists. For example, Thomas Gold, he did die a couple of years ago, but he was professor of astronomy at Cornell. If you go on the internet with problems with the Big Bang Theory, there's a whole group of scientists now that have had a couple of meetings. They've published statements in, for example, science magazines like New Scientist saying, look, we are protesting the evidence for the Big Bang Theory just isn't there. We need to realise this. We need to accept this. There are major problems with the Big Bang Theory.
Mm-hmm. Now, Doctor, you're really concerned about getting information like your book, Evolution Impossible, into the hands of students, correct?
Yes, that's right. I would like to encourage people as they email their friends, as they go on their social media, to draw attention to the book, that students can know that they have a resource that they can read that can provide the answers to most of the questions that they would have, and that shows that evolution is absolutely impossible. It cannot explain the origin of life on Earth. Sure, there can be evolutionary changes that are changes that we observe, so changes today, but they're not changes that produces the new information that can produce a new type of animal. They're always a loss of information, and students need to know that and have confidence. They need to know that radiometric dating methods have never been validated, and that there's a whole lot of inconsistencies in the data that give really wild results. They need to know that there's no evidence in the fossil record for actual evolutionary development. It's just a record of extinction of fully formed animals and this sort of thing. And they need to have those resources where it goes back to the scientific literature where these facts have been established by research.
And his book here, Evolution Impossible, is designed here to really impact students, Christian educators, scientists, just anyone eager to defend a biblical worldview. Again, it's available through Crosstalk, our way of saying thank you for your support of $17 or more. And the number here to call is 800-729-9829 in obtaining your copy. If you have a question as it relates to origins, evolution, pick up your phone, give us a call here today at Crosstalk, 800-733-9829. All the phone lines are open. You'll be able to get right through to us. That's 800-733-9829. Doctor, is there sound, reliable evidence to support a global flood?
Oh, very, very much so. And even geologists themselves admit this. They admit, for example, that during the Cretaceous period that the entire Earth was covered by water. They admit that there have been massive extinctions in the past, but instead of putting it in one event, they put it over about 5 or 6 extinctions occurring hundreds of millions of years or tens of millions of years apart. But they admit that the Earth was covered with water. The entire surface of the Earth, if you look at the structure of the Earth, there's a very, very thin layer of sedimentary rock. That's the sort of rock that's usually laid down underwater or sometimes under wind conditions, but mainly underwater, virtually coating the surface of the Earth. I mean, there's some volcanic rock as well mixed with it, but it's something like 70 or 80% of the rock on the surface of the Earth is sedimentary rock that's been laid down underwater. So we have it's staring us right there in the face, As I drive through the roads around Australia here, through the cuttings, you can see all the sedimentary layers that have been laid down. They're all, flat. If it occurred over millions of years, there'd be erosion rates. We have really heavy rain and the gravel washes away in my driveway here. I've got to go and, put more gravel back in. It very quickly, yet they say there's millions of years between these layers, and yet they're all flat, no erosion rates between. So when we look at the evidence, it's very straightforward. It's all around us.
Well, let's go to the phone lines here today. From Pensacola, Florida, we have Michael calling. Michael, you're on the air.
Yes, sir. I'd like to ask a question. Are we still fooling with evolution in schools and whatnot because of economic reasons, because it generates income for people who believe in that stuff, books material? And the second one is space probe, Mars space probe. Is that just a waste of time?
Well, I mean, all research is going to lead to new information. It's just how scientists then interpret the information, and unfortunately, billions of dollars have been invested in teaching evolution, and now for these colleges and universities to admit that they've been teaching something wrong, it's just a massive back down, and that just isn't going to happen. People aren't going to lose faith that way. So that's why they fiercely politically uphold evolution. They have to, otherwise they're seen as an absolute major blunder. But in actual fact, that's the reason why they have to make all these assertions that no, evolution is a fact. You can't believe otherwise, because they know they're standing on very, very shaky ground. The evidence is just dissolving away from underneath them as we make more and more discoveries. So that's why they've got to be more and more enforcing the fact, no, you can't believe anything else. It must be evolution.
What about this Mars space probe? I mean, I noticed it didn't go down into several feet of dust. He's asking, is this a waste of time? Is this a waste of resources in that regard? What are your thoughts?
Oh, well, I think there's possibly a much greater need to develop ways to relieve starving and disease and cancer and so forth, that money could be usefully employed. On the other hand, I guess we have to have a balance, and scientists perhaps we're hoping to find evidence for life on Mars, but it does tell them more about the planet. I don't want to be a judge of whether it's not a waste of money.
Let's go to Mitchell, South Dakota. Tom, you're on the air.
Thank you. A couple of things. How are new students of science reacting to this information that you've got, which seems to be unarguable? How are they reacting? I mean, I can't believe that new students who are truly got a burning desire to develop or investigate science would not want their teachers or their college or their institute to explore what you've said, either disprove it or bring it into the curriculum. And the other thing is, why aren't we hearing more about this in the media? I think I know the answer already, but I was hoping maybe you might enlighten it. And how are your peers reacting throughout academia to what you have brought out here in this book? And I'm going to hang up and listen.
Okay, and Doctor, your book came out in June 2012.
In regard to the first question, I think most students aren't aware that there is so much evidence refuting evolution. Maybe some students who get creation literature from the different creation groups maybe, but most students aren't aware because the evidence is fragmented. It's in different places. It's not put together, and they're continually told that evolution is a fact. And many of the students get on board this, and I know when my daughter was at university and discussion of evolution or creation came up, there was sort of a whole atmosphere in the class very much against creationists, to the point of view that she wouldn't say anything. She felt if she did, she would be torn to pieces just about. So this is very sad. One of the reasons that, with regard to the evidence for evolution and how my peers react to this, is a couple of different ways. I published an article in Chemistry Australia back in 2007, a creationist view of the intelligent design debate, and that was a peer review article. I'm a fellow of the Royal Australian Chemical Institute. It was published as a feature article in the journal, which is the Australian leading journal in Australia for the Institute. And as soon as it was published, a number of scientists contacted the Institute saying that this article should not have been published. And the protest was so strong that the Royal Australian Chemical Institute executive met over Easter. It was actually over Easter, and they decided to remove my article off the electronic version of the magazine at that time.
So much for academic freedom.
Yes, well, when you look at the article in the following issue, and the references are in my book, by the way, you see that what they simply did was they asserted that the article should not have been published, that they accused me of using made-up evidence and so forth. Essentially accused me of being a liar, I suppose, and yet my article was referenced. They gave no refuting evidence. They didn't say Ashton is wrong because Bloggs and Jones have published this in such and such a journal, or Smith and Williamson have published this. Mm-hmm. They just made these assertions. But on the other hand, when I rang up those guys, and I only got through to one particular professor, the others just weren't available. He admitted that he didn't have any evidence to disprove what I said. His argument was, but we will find the evidence. But when, again, I talked to my colleagues, because here in Australia a professor is the highest academic position in the university, when I talked to my colleagues, many of my colleagues actually have questions, and they want to know. They want to... they're interested in what I'm writing, and they talk to me and they say, well, John, we have to publish from an evolutionary perspective or we'll lose our job. Wow. we won't have a job anymore, but we really have questions about this, and they are very happy to talk to me, and so I'm highly regarded there. But I think the reasons why this material isn't getting out as it should is that you've got scientists like Richard Dawkins who are putting out books like Evolution, the Greatest Show on Earth, and of course the media gets on to this, and this is really great. But essentially, what's the bottom line? The bottom line is that people are wanting to remove God from our curriculum. We
got to take a break. We'll be right back.
For the Worldview Weekend Minute, I'm Brandon House. Our website is worldviewweekend.com. There are 6 main worldviews that rule the world. Now, there are more than 6 worldviews, but there are 6 main worldviews that rule the world. One of those is Islam. And did you know that worldview is becoming very heated here in America? Did you know that there are numerous reports, including the WorldTribune.com reporting, that Obama is covertly recruiting Muslims as Democrats? We have reports from people like U.S. Congressman Louis Gohmert, 1st District of Texas, stating that the administration appears to be complicit in supporting the designated terrorist organization Hamas. We have another report from Accuracy in Media titled "The Enemy is Inside the Wire," talking about how we now have radical Muslims connected to Hamas and Islamic Society of North America inside the Department of Homeland Security and other major organizations. There is a worldview war going on in America.
This is Crosstalk on VCY America. We're speaking with Dr. John Ashton today. He has not only been involved in 40-plus years of research and teaching and active in science, but he is also author of some books, one of which we're talking about today, released in June of 2012. His book, Evolution Impossible, 12 Reasons Why Evolution Cannot Explain the Origin of the Earth. You don't have to be a scientist to read this book. This is certainly to get into the hands of students, those who want to defend a biblical worldview. Much evidence and information in this book, Evolution Impossible. It is available through Crosstalk, our way of saying thank you for your support of $17 or more to support the program. Crosstalk will send you a copy of his book, Evolution Impossible, that will include postage arriving at your home as well. But taking your phone calls here today at 800-733-9829. We have Mike calling from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Mike, you're on the air.
Well, thanks for taking my call and the good work. We always hear, and the kids from the time they're young up, that dinosaurs, and millions of years. Do you think a good plan of attack would be to say dinosaurs in maybe around 6,000 years? And I went to Marquette and I was taught evolution, and when I gave him some literature on evolution creation, then told him to watch VCYW TV on the creation evolution debate and saw that there is no ape man, etc. He got really upset. So keep up the good work. God bless you and get the gospel out.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Doctor, instead of millions of years, would we be talking thousands of years for dinosaurs?
Definitely. Oh, yes. Yes, they would have been around definitely between up to the flood, and obviously some would have gone into the ark as well, but I guess they were, died out or were killed off in the time after that.
Mm-hmm. Doctor,
but I think also they account for a lot of dragon myths that we have are probably remnants of the surviving dinosaurs.
Doctor, what do you believe is the most compelling evidence that there is that refutes evolution, supports the creation model?
The main evidence would be that we have no known mechanism whereby new genetic code can form. And massive amounts of new code are required for evolution to occur, an unbelievable amount. And there's no evidence of this code forming. We have no examples of significant amount of new code forming. And statistically, it is absolutely impossible. The main foundational principle of evolution is statistically impossible, has never been observed.
Let's go to Bruce, calling from Johnson Creek. Bruce, you're on the air.
Oh, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I was the professor about the Mars rover that just landed on Mars, and they're there to find evidence of life, past life, fossil life, even if it's microbial. I was wondering if the professor has any thoughts on the possibility of they would find something, and if they could, if it was because somehow some form of life transported from the Earth to Mars, not that, as evolution would suggest, that originated on Mars. And they're even saying that it went from Mars to Earth. So just what the possibility is, some kind of life form could have traveled from Earth to Mars if they were to find anything.
Yes, I think it is highly unlikely. Maybe theoretically it is possible that some bacteria could get up there, but again, whether they would survive in the extreme conditions up there. But evolutionists, and even I saw Richard Dawkins admitted that they have no explanation for how the first living life forms could form on Earth, and even he conceded, well, maybe life had to come here from outer space. And that's, as I said earlier, they have no explanation for how the original first life could form. from non-living molecules. There's no known process. It would seem to be absolutely impossible on the basis of the mechanisms that we know, the biochemistry. Therefore, they have to say life possibly came here from outer space. But that really doesn't solve anything. How did life form in outer space anyway? But that's how desperate they are, and that's why they have to look to places like Mars to try and get some small, minute piece of evidence to support their theory. Their theory is very short on evidence. There's really no evidence for the creation model out there.
We're going to squeeze one last question in from Iron River, and that is Chris. Go ahead. You're on the air, Chris. Chris, turn your radio off, please.
Okay.
Go ahead with your question.
Yes, I have a...
Chris, go ahead.
Okay. I was wondering if you could explain the difference between a law and a theory, because it seems like evolution is taught so much as a law, but yet it's only considered a theory.
Okay.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, yeah, a theory is an explanation for how we came to be, or a theory for an observed phenomena. A law is an absolute relationship of something always happens. So we can have the law of abiogenesis, which says that non-life things never form living things, so they're observed things. The theory of evolution, theoretically, is certainly just a theory because there's no proven evidence for it, but people want to make it a law because they want to try and somehow remove the doubt about evolution. But that is very wrong. That's just another political move to try and enforce a theory that has absolutely no scientific foundation.
Chris, we appreciate your call here today, and we've run out of time. Our guest has been Dr. John Ashton, speaking to us from Australia today, and it's a tremendous, impactful book, one of the most compelling and authoritative rebuttals of evolution today. It just came out in June, and it's called Evolution Impossible, 12 Reasons Why Evolution Cannot Explain the Origin of Life on Earth. It is available for donation of $17 or more, which can be obtained by calling our switchboard here at 800-729-9829, or by writing to Crosstalk, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208. Well, Dr. Ashton, we appreciate your early wake-up call here this morning and joining us for the program.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, and I hope it's been a blessing to listeners.
Great. And, folks, again, it's a book that's tremendous for anyone who's just eager to defend a biblical worldview as it relates to the topic of origins. And it takes us right back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Thanks for joining us today here on Crosstalk on the VCY American Network. Join us each weekday at the same time as we talk about issues that impact our faith, certainly our families, and our freedom.
Listening to Crosstalk via satellite and the internet from VCY America. Views expressed may or may not be those of this station. For a CD of today's program, send a donation of $6 or more to VCY Tape Ministry, 3434 West Kilbourne Avenue, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53208, or download by RSS or podcast from crosstalkamerica.com. And join us again for Crosstalk.